Hello and welcome to the 6th grade, 5th 6 weeks curriculum preview. Our focus this 6 weeks is persuasion, media literacy, informational text, and of course, STAR preparation. Since many of our standards this 6 weeks are repeated, I'm only going to focus on the ones that are new for this 6 weeks. It doesn't mean we don't refresh and renew on the standards that we've already taught. It just means these are the big ones that are brand new introductory standards this 6 weeks. 10B deals with informational text, and it asks students to explain whether facts included in an argument are used for or against an issue. Students have had experience in choosing what evidence is used or facts are used, but they have not had to talk about whether they're for or against. To me, 11A kind of partners with 10B in the fact that it asks you to compare and contrast the structure and viewpoints of two different authors writing for the same purpose, noticing the stated claim and supporting evidence. So students would have to read at least 2 pieces of persuasive text written for the same purpose, so written to persuade everyone to recycle. And then they have to look at the purpose. So the purpose would be to persuade everyone to recycle. They would note the stated claim that each author makes and the evidence that each author provides. That's where it ties into 10B, is in the evidence section. So is the evidence provided for an issue or against an issue? What types of evidence did an author use? The big part of this one is also they have to look at the structure that an author used. So maybe one would be an article, and one piece would be an article, and one piece would be a letter. And the students would have to compare and contrast how those structures worked and how they got their viewpoint across. Standard 11B asks students to identify simply faulty reasoning used in persuasive texts. That can be really difficult for our middle schoolers because that's how they think. One thing always leads to another. Because you do this, this will happen. And they're going to need help in understanding that the world doesn't always work that way, first of all, but second of all, that you need to be able to prove that one thing leads to another. 13A asks students to explain messages conveyed in various forms of media. So students will need to hear maybe an audio message versus a visual message versus a picture versus a song or a commercial. 13B asks students to recognize how various techniques influence viewers' emotions. Students are very good at things like music and sounds and things like that. But there could be some more subtle techniques such as lighting or shading that could also influence your emotion. 13C asks students to critique persuasive techniques used in media messages. Although this is media literacy, it's also very important for our persuasive reading and our persuasive writing, because as students get older and are doing analysis of persuasive text, they're going to really need to be able to pick up on some of those persuasive techniques that are done rhetorically. And so the more experience they have now at understanding what these are and how they play out in one way, it will help them understand how it plays out in another. And then 13D, analyze various digital media venues for levels of formality and informality. Our students need help with that because they don't always understand that the formality is different. For example, if you're writing a text to a friend, it has one level of formality versus an email to your boss. It should sound different, and they need help with understanding that. We're also going to write a persuasive essay this 6 weeks, and all of these standards above can play into that persuasive essay. As you know, reading and writing are reciprocal processes, but our students have not had practice with this. Students are tested on persuasive essay at 10th grade, and the thing that our students have the hardest time on is taking a stand. They want to say, well, it could be this, or it could be that. And so we need them to understand that in order to persuade someone, you have to take a side. You have to make a claim. As always, it's important to remember our process skills, that our Figure 19 skills overlay with everything, that we do not teach skills in isolation from metacognitive processes, and then that we remember that all of our standards call for application of previously taught skills, because really our standards are a kindergarten through 6th grade continuum. Especially with grammar, we note that, we have to have mastery of those, because when we test in 7th, 9th, and 10th, it is all previously taught skills. And if we're not mastering them at grade level, our kids are getting, they're not being successful. So let's look at assessment from the 2016 STAR. We're going to specifically look at persuasion. So this question is persuasive text with figure 19b. Paragraphs 5, 6, and 8 help support the author's argument by. This question was very interesting to me because typically we don't see a skipped paragraph. We might see like paragraph 5 and 8, or paragraphs 5 and 6, or 5, 6, and 7. I haven't seen them do things where they just leave out one paragraph. So we're going to have kids paying attention there to what paragraphs to look at. But then also notice these verbs: explaining, indicating, suggesting, showing. Students need to know the difference of what evidence is doing there and what the author's doing. It's a difference to explain something or to indicate something or to suggest something. So those are some difficult vocabulary that we really need to talk about. This is another 11 in figure 19b question, but it deals specifically with evidence. In paragraph 4, Katie includes specific information from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality in order to. So we have to look at what the information is, or the evidence, and then where did it come from. And then notice here the word credibility is used. Credibility is a big issue for our students that we need to help them understand. They need to know what is credible and what is not credible, and how you weigh that out. They also need to be able to use that word, credibility. So here they would look at what information was given, what source was used, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and then what was the purpose of that information. They also ask a straight 11b question: which of the author's arguments is based on faulty reasoning? Students here have a multiple-step process. They have to know what faulty reasoning is, they have to be able to identify it, and then they have to be able to tell, does this meet that standard of faulty reasoning or not? And so here is where students really have to think about what is it and how does it work. And so it is identification, but it's also above identification, in that they have to give examples of faulty reasoning from the text. It's really being able to use text evidence. The last question about 11 in figure 19 asks about an opposing viewpoint. An opposing viewpoint is something that we really take into consideration when we're writing a persuasive essay, but we also need to consider it when we're reading persuasive text. So here they have to have familiarity with what an opposing viewpoint is and how do you show that you've considered it. That word consider, too, is also a good vocabulary word. And so students have to really be able to apply their ability to deal with an opposing viewpoint. So let's talk about STAR review. I know it's coming up. So one thing that you could do to prepare for STAR review is to consider your former Common Formative Assessment scores and your CBA scores. Look at where the kids are struggling. Look at where whole groups are struggling versus small groups are struggling. And consider using small groups to reteach and review, because not all kids need all groups. You may have a kid that needs vocabulary help but doesn't need help with fiction. You may have a kid who needs figure 19 with fiction and nonfiction versus a kid who just needs nonfiction. But then also ask your students to determine their strengths and weaknesses and to help make a plan. We need to get them invested in their own learning and do it as kind of a PDSA for themselves. If they can say, you know, I'm really good in fiction, but I'm really not good with nonfiction, and can say, I need help there, they're probably going to be more invested than if we just say, you're going to do this. So some resources for you is the Texas Gateway. This is written by TEA people, and so it is written for Texas-specific lessons. You can search by grade and content, and then you can find on-track lessons or Right from Texas lessons that can be used in a variety of ways. You can use them whole group, you can use them small group, you can use them individually. Kids can do them at home, you can use just a piece of it. It gives you a lot of resources, especially for doing this kind of STAR prep. As always, I'm here to help you, so please let me know if you need anything. Thank you.